You're about to discover one of the best gambits in the history of chess. Plus, this gambit is played with the black pieces, and it's let me have a good laugh and win tons of games. So, I'm going to show you exactly how to play it, and also a bunch of useful traps you can use when you try it out for yourself. What I like most about this gambit is that we get to play it whenever our opponent goes for the Italian opening. That is the most played opening in the history of chess, so we can use this gambit in tons of games. When your opponent plays the Italian opening, you just need to play this move right here, f5, which is an extremely powerful move. First of all, we're giving away a pawn, but it's a poison pawn. You can't take it. If they take the pawn, they're going to have serious problems, but don't worry. In this video, I'm going to explain what to do whether they capture the pawn or not. But what happens, chess teacher, if they take this pawn from me? Why is it a poisoned pawn? Well, basically, what we were doing with the move 5 wasn't just giving away a pawn, but also distracting their central pawn. It was the pawn that was holding up their position. Now we're going to play this spectacular pawn advance, e4, thanks to having distracted their central pawn. And let's take a look at some of that. We're attacking a knight. Very good at chess teacher. Everyone can see that. But where can this knight go? It can't go to these two squares. Why is that? Because the queen is controlling them. It also can't jump here because the knight controls it, just like the d4 square. So in this situation, this knight, just for having captured the pawn, would actually have to retreat all the way back to its original square. Alright, if it retreats, we would simply play d5, attacking this bishop, and when it moves back, we would recapture the pawn we're down with a big advantage. But here, there's still an option for the white pieces to try to avoid retreating the knight. And it's the option I see most often. Here, when I push this pawn, they take a little while to make a move while they think, and they come to the conclusion that they can play queen e2, pinning this pawn. Alright, they've pinned our pawn. It's true that now we can't capture, but there's a solution to this. Super simple, you pin my pawn, so I just put my queen in front of the king as well. And now this pawn is once again attacking the knight. Solution, right now, this knight is being threatened again and cannot go anywhere. It has to move back, just like that. And now comes the best part. You can play this whether they've played queen e2 or not, because now you know you have a really good option. So here, we'll play knight to f6, developing our pieces normally. I assure you, this setup, it's really, really good. I've even played it in slow tournament games with a very high success rate. In slow games and in fast games, you can't even imagine how well it works. Alright, now of course, white wants to develop the knight, but what happens? They can't. If they try to develop this knight over here, it's a disaster. What they want is to try to develop this knight over here. And if they want to develop the knight to f3 and also start developing their bishop, they only have one possible move. d3, which actually seems like a super good move. It threatens our central pawn and lets the bishop out. When this pawn disappears, they'll be able to develop the knight to f3. But here, we've pretty much already won the game with a move you're gonna love. Pay close attention to this move. Knight to d4! Exclamation mark. What are we attacking? Well, the first threat is obvious. We're attacking the queen, right? But on top of that, we have another threat. Knight takes on c2 check, and we'd also take the rook. So they have to move the queen to one of these two squares, either d1 or d2, to keep defending the c2 square. If they don't move it to these two squares, and for example put it on f1, that's a really bad move. We'd win the rook. But what they don't realize is that whether they go to d1 or d2, it doesn't matter to us. The threat remains, and we're going to unleash the spectacular bombshell. Knight takes on c2, check. We're going to take the rook, so they have to capture this knight, and here, we didn't win the rook, but we did win the queen, thanks to this discovered attack. Pawn takes on d3. Check, and we're going to take the queen. For example, they might try knight to e2 to save themselves, but we take the queen with the pawn, and if they try to block with the queen, we simply capture it with the pawn. Don't take it with the queen, because then they'd recapture with the knight. Just play d takes e2, and we'd have an extra queen. But this is just the beginning of this gambit, because pay attention, it only gets better from here. We would immediately, as we seen, if they play d3. Careful, this is one of the most common moves in this position because it's really hard to play anything else. The knight can't move, this bishop can't move either, but it's true that the knight on c3 can move. So what happens, Chessteacher, if instead of playing d3, they develop the knight in a totally natural way? Don't worry, because here we continue in a spectacular way. Again, knight to d4. As you can see, this gambit isn't complicated. The moves repeat themselves quite a bit across the different lines, so we'll always have the right moves come to mind. We attack the queen. Now it can retreat without any problem. Logically, it should go to d1 because we're threatening the fork again. But now the tactical idea of knight takes c2 wouldn't work, right? Because they would simply take our knight and nothing would happen here. All right, so here we're going to play logically. We would love to play d5. We could do it if our opponent hadn't played queen e2 and we hadn't played queen e7, because the queen would be defending the square. However, since they've played the queen moves, we can't play d5 directly. What can we? d5, what a brutal move. It's true that now it's just wonderful, isn't it? If they move the bishop away, we've achieved what we wanted. We're going to get the pawn back. But of course, this pawn is completely free. And there are two pieces attacking it. They can capture it. Knight takes and bishop takes, for example, right? And now we're down 2 pawns. Actually, it's just one, because we're going to recapture this pawn on f5. Yeah, that when we're down a pawn, if we can justify it by having much more initiative, much more attack, it's way better to have the attack than the pawn. In this case, our opponent hasn't developed any pieces. They just have a bishop that's really badly placed here because no one is defending it. And we have a super active knight, a pawn that restricts their position, and an extremely active bishop as well. We can push forward and launch this attack here. We can threaten this bishop with different consequences for the white pieces. This queen is very active with discovered attacks, and, as if that weren't enough, we can castle long to bring the rook into play as well. In other words, we're in a fantastic position here. And not only that, but here, white can make all kinds of mistakes. The first mistake I see most often, and the most natural move in this position, is to develop this knight via e2. Since they can't develop it through f3 or h3 because we would double their pawns and end up in a fantastic position, people usually develop their knight through e2. And this is a serious mistake, a very, very serious one. Why? Because we can continue with a truly stunning move. The bishop pin with bishop to g4. This knight has pinned itself. With the move bishop to g4, we put pressure on this knight with both our knight and bishop. And as you can see, there is absolutely no way to save it. None at all. If they play f3, we simply exchange and threaten the pin and the rook again. So we're going to win this knight. Knight to e2 wouldn't be a possible move. Alright, another move I see a lot is c3. Basically saying, look, what's really bothering me is this knight right here. It's putting pressure on a lot of squares, so what I want is to threaten it so it leaves. If we move our knight back, it's true, white has achieved their goal. But here, there's a tactical idea that probably wouldn't have occurred to you if you hadn't watched this video. So just for that, you owe me a big like. Because now, when they play c3, you'll simply know that the right move is knight to f3. Double exclamation mark. An absolutely spectacular bombshell. Check. Obviously, they can capture our knight. If they capture it with the queen, we win the queen. If they capture it with the knight, we simply recapture, discover check, we take here. So the only good move logically seems to be capturing with the pawn, and that way they make sure to take our knight. However, we can continue with pawn takes on f3, discover check with the queen. The king has to move, and now when the king moves, we simply follow up with bishop to d3, check. They have to block. We capture with the pawn, check. We take the queen, and this will be an absolute steal for us. And if, when we capture this pawn, instead of moving the king, which as you've seen would pretty much end in checkmate or if not, winning the queen, they block directly with the knight, that actually makes a lot of sense, you know what I mean? We just gave away a knight. The opponents might think, well, now I'll give you mine, and we keep playing the game. Well, no, because here there's a spectacular bombshell that I'd like you to pause the video and try to find, to see if you can figure it out. I'm going to explain it to you right now, so pay attention. The move is bishop to c2 is very logical. We're threatening the queen, and it can't go anywhere. The only move to avoid losing it is to capture this bishop. And since we've diverted the queen from defending the knight, we simply continue with queen takes e2. Checkmate. You're going to love this when you play this gambit here, and your opponent captures. Remember, it's super important to push forward to threaten this knight. But it could happen that they don't fall for the move of playing queen e2. It's very likely they will. Yes, we've already seen how that ends. But a lot of people, when we threaten the knight and they see it can't go anywhere, will indeed pull the knight back to avoid losing it. Those are the only two possible moves, just those two, queen to e2 and retreating the knight. We've already seen queen to e2, so what happens if the knight retreats? Logically, as I was saying, we're going to play d5, threatening this bishop. Honestly, it doesn't really matter where this bishop goes. Maybe the most active is to put it on b5 to threaten our knight, yeah? We could continue with bishop takes f5, which would be an absolutely outstanding move. As you can see, thanks to this gambit, we'll recover the pawn, we won't be down any pawns, and also after bishop takes f5, knight to f6, bishop to c5, short castle, opening the diagonal for the rook, this would be a completely comfortable game for us. But we even have an even better move that I love, which is queen to g5, the one I always use when they immediately retreat the knight backward. Now, there's some things you need to know. First of all, we're threatening queen takes g2, winning the rook, because there would be no way to defend it, and then attacking the knight. So here, well, what most people do first is capture this knight, and you need to know this. First, you recapture here. Why? Because it's check, so you recapture this piece here first, and now they absolutely have to deal with a threat on g2. If they don't exchange, it's exactly the same. Don't worry, they just have to stop this threat. And basically, there are three ways to defend against this threat. King to f1, which would be fantastic for us. We would just keep developing bishop to knight f6, and we could even attack a lot, right? Castling, and we put the rook on the same file as the king. But so far, no one has played king f1 against me. They've only played two moves, g3 and g4. Let's look at both of them. If they play g3, how can we continue? Well, there are a lot of ways to continue here. Among them, bishop to f5 would be a really extraordinary way. In fact, that's what I recommend to you. Bishop takes on f5. Now, they've been left with a lot of weaknesses on the king side. We're not down a pawn, material is equal, and our position is much better. We have the b file for the rook. We're going to develop the bishop to c5, directly targeting the f2 square. The knight will come out via f6, will castle, and will attack the f2 square again with the rook. This looks pretty bad for the white pieces. That said, the move I see most often is g4. This way, they strongly defend this pawn, they keep their extra pawn solid, and the g4 pawn is protected by the queen. It seems like here we have some complications in continuing our development. This bishop seems like it can only come out here or here. But don't worry, because what you should simply do here, and I love this, I love the look of, well, I won't say a bad word, right? The look of my opponent's faces when I play bishop takes f5. And right away they realized that this move was extremely bad. Bishop takes f5 is simply recapturing the pawn. But why are we giving away the bishop? Don't worry, because the bishop can't be taken. It would open up the line for us to play queen to g2, threatening the rook. Can that rook be defended? Now they're going to lose the rook. But they always do the same thing to me. First, they give me a check. I can't play g6 because they trade and I'd lose the rook. Careful, it's not that simple. So relax. If they try to check you, don't be afraid at all. Just move your king, no worries. If you're about to win a free rook, you shouldn't be afraid of anything at all. For example, if they keep attacking you, be careful. There's no rush to capture that rook because it's not going anywhere. Let's defend against a simple attack first, because the queen is just coming in and can't really do anything. The bishop is threatening us with check, but I play knight to h6, threatening the queen. And now this bishop is really well defended by the rook. How can they continue? Well, the only more or less normal square the queen has is this one here, right? Queen to e6, but this is a complete mistake. We could capture the rook directly, but the move I like the most is this one here, bishop to d6. And now, as you can see, this rook can't be saved, this queen can't go anywhere, we're trapping the queen, so this queen is almost certainly going to be lost as well. Against any move, instead of capturing the rook, I'm going to play rook to e8, capturing the queen. She can't go anywhere. And not only that, but I'll capture the queen, and then even capture the rook as well. This happened to them because they tried to create counterplay with the queen. I see this a lot. If they don't go for this counterplay, it's fine. They'll just move the rook and that's it. Be very careful with this, extremely careful. We're threatening the knight, and we've seen both queen to e2 and knight to g1, right? Those seem to be the only two options if they don't want to lose the knight. But here, if you play against a professional player or someone who knows this BL Gambit, they might play this incredible knight sacrifice, knight to e4. Don't worry, it looks like a crazy sacrifice, and in fact, it is a wild sacrifice if you don't know it. But if you do know it, like I'm going to show you in this video, there's absolutely no problem. Why is this a good move? Well, you shouldn't capture it because then they'd come in with the queen, hit you with a huge check, and you wouldn't be able to move forward because they'd capture you. Plus, they're threatening a discovered attack. We can't capture because they take our rook, right? If we play knight to f6, they sacrifice the queen with the move g7, a brutal move because we capture the queen, and then they play g takes h8, capturing the rook and promoting to another queen. So this would be pretty horrible for us. So, in conclusion, what should you do if they play this amazing knight sacrifice on d4, which, as I said, is extremely dangerous? Well, simply play knight to f6, avoiding the queen's entry. That's all there is to it. And here, absolutely nothing has happened. Now we really are threatening the knight. Logically, they have to do something. For example, the most common thing is to capture in 80% of games, but if they don't capture, it doesn't matter. We're going to stick with our ideas, we're going to recapture with the b-pawn, so that now, no matter what the opponent plays, we're going to continue with d5, threatening the bishop, and we're going to recapture this f5 pawn. And as you can see, in this gambit, whenever we want, we're going to get back the pawn we gave away, and on top of that, we'll end up with a better position. Let me give you a very quick example, for instance. I'm going to develop my pieces like this, so that now it's going to be really hard for them to get out. We're going to castle. This file is also going to be completely open. We can advance a lot on this side. This position is clearly better for black, even though they've tried to play the gambit correctly. I'm sure someone in the comments is going to say, well, I've checked. This gambit was stockfish, and here, the move it recommends isn't to capture this pawn, but rather, the best move is to play d4, counterattacking in the center first of all. Right, now I'll show you how to play if they play d4, which is the best move according to the analysis engine. However, those of you watching this can also check how often white actually plays d4, and you'll see that only about 3% of people against the gambit we're discussing actually play d4. Therefore, it's something very uncommon, but if they do play it against you, you need to be well prepared. So what do we got to do? Well, first of all, we're going to recapture this pawn with our f-pawn. Very good, we're blocking the knight. Most likely, they'll play knight takes e5. Now this knight actually has a good square to escape to, and that's by capturing a central pawn. Without a doubt, this looks much better for white. That's right, it looks better. Even so, we're still in a very good position. Even though it might seem a little scary, don't worry, because you're going to get to know it. We're not going to capture the knight. Instead, we're going to play d5, threatening this bishop here. Now, white can do the following. Either move the bishop away, which would be perfect because it would give us time to play knight to f6 and prevent queen entries, or play queen to h5 directly, which is a very good move because it immediately threatens the king with both the knight and the queen. And it seems like here we have no way out because g6 is not possible since knight takes g6 would follow. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do because even though this might seem very good for white, it's not really that great. They're getting ahead of themselves, maybe rushing things too much. Knight to f6 attacks the queen, the knight, and also the bishop. For now, they can still save themselves. To save the knight, they have to place the queen, which is under attack, on the same file as the rook, for example. The only move they have is queen to h4, since h3 would be covered by our bishop from a distance. It's true. Now we can't capture this knight because, simply, they would take our rook, and we also can't capture this bishop because they would simply take the rook as well. So, what should we do? Don't worry, because it's much simpler than it seems. Here's what we're going to do. First of all, how can we keep up the attack with a brutal move, knight takes d4? We have 2 pawns against 2 pawns, so we're even in material. They still can't take the rook, because if they do, now we would simply play knight takes c2, winning a pawn and then taking their rook. That would be fantastic for us. Also, this knight would most likely end up trapped. So what should they do? Well, they should try to defend the 2 things that are being attacked, the pawn on c2 and the bishop on c4. Those are the 2 things under attack right now. What move could they play? Bishop to b3 seems laughable. They move the attacked bishop back and defend the c2 square. But this, my friends, is a mistake. And why is it a mistake? Because now we're going to jump back with this knight. Knight to f5, attacking the queen. The queen has to stay in the same column as the rook, because if not, we'll capture the knight. So they have to play queen to h3, there's no other option. And now we're going to start looking for discovered attacks with this knight to attack the queen with a bishop. And without a doubt, the best move is this one right here. Knight to e7, we attack the queen, But not only that, we also attack this knight. So we've managed to win a piece completely cleanly. It's true that they've tried to attack a lot with their pieces, with their queen, but even so, we've come out ahead with a clean piece. It's a little scary, but it's simple. It's very likely that just by watching this video once, you won't remember all of this, and that's okay. You can save this video to watch it as many times as you need. So many of you will probably tell me, instead of playing bishop to b3, I'll go into the line you mentioned. I take your rook and you take mine, and it looks like there's still a game here, but don't worry because this doesn't work. If they try to play knight takes h to win the rook, you can even do the following. Look, knight takes f2 check. The king has to move, and instead of capturing the rook first, we capture the bishop first because that rook can't escape. So right now we're going to win that rook and we'll have a free bishop. And not only that, but this knight is also going to have a hard time getting out. Whatever they do, for example, here, the most common move, I checked the database, is bishop to g5, putting a lot of pressure on this knight, but this isn't effective at all. In fact, with this, we could even deliver this incredible checkmate, one of the most important moves you should remember from this position. If they don't play this against you, don't worry, because you can capture the rook, play bishop to g7, win this knight, and at the very least you'll be up a bishop or even a bishop and a knight. I love it when I play this gambit and people get scared, and instead of capturing or doing something weird, they just say, well, I'll simply defend the pawn with d3. Careful, because this is the move I see most often in games. Because people think, well, surely what my opponent has prepared is that he wants me to capture the pawn. So I defend it, and if he captures, I recapture, and nothing happens. But don't worry, because here we have some very good news. Bishop to c5, a very strong move. Now, yes, white could continue by recapturing, and we'd be in a similar position, but what's really happening is that we're tempting white to make this incredible move. With the bishop and a knight, they're threatening the f7 square. It seems like an absolutely brutal threat. It really looks almost impossible to stop. We probably have to play knight to h6 or something like that. But we're going to act as if we didn't see it and disconnect the knight from the bishop. That way, now we're threatening it. So we force our opponent to keep going down their path. There's no turning back now. They're threatening our queen, they're threatening our rook. Most likely at this point, your opponent, even in the app chat, is going to tell you, friend, just resign. But not at all, because the one who should resign here is him. We're gonna play queen to h4, hitting back really hard at the f2 square. A very, very good move. Also, you'll see that this pawn we've pushed forward is incredibly important. Logically, if the knight takes the rook, it would be checkmate on the next move. They have to try to defend this square. Queen to f3 doesn't work, because, for example, we could attack the queen and also attack this square here. Or my favorite move is to play this pawn here, and then no matter what they do, play bishop to g4 and win the queen because it has nowhere to go. That's why here, queen to f3 doesn't work. g3 seems like a very bad move, because we could simply break in with the queen through the white squares, even with the pawn. And this position is going to be extremely difficult to defend. Here we could attack the queen and the f2 square as well with the bishop, and this is extremely hard for white to defend. So here, let me explain. People always play the same thing against me. Either queen to f3, which is very bad, or they castle. If they castle, it looks like everything is safe, there's no more attack because this is well defended, we can't attack here, and it simply seems like we're going to lose the rook. And now that I've done this, teacher, it seems like I'm going to lose here no matter what, and there's no way to save ourselves. Well, don't worry, let them take your rook, knight to f6, and when they capture your rook, knight to g4, so that we're threatening checkmate on h2, and not only that, we're also threatening to come in with 3 pieces on f2. Logically, they're going to defend against mate with the move h3 because there's no other move that can stop the checkmate. And when they play h3, we simply attack over here. Knight takes on f2, and of course they have to give up the rook, because otherwise we'd have a discovered attack with the bishop. And when they give up the rook, we're going to capture with the queen. So right now we're down a knight. Remember, we're down a knight because we've captured a rook, but so have they, and we've sacrificed the knight while they haven't, so we're down a knight. Still, the game is forcibly won. The king has to go to h1, and remember this move well because it's key. f3. We threaten checkmate on the next move, so they have to capture. And now what we're going to do is simply play d5, threatening the bishop and threatening to come in through here. They might try to stop bishop takes h3, but no, thank you. There is no move for white that prevents bishop takes h3, so since that's the case, they try to defend their bishop. For example, bishop takes d5. So now we continue with bishop takes h3, and this really can't be stopped anymore. We're threatening queen to g2 checkmate. No matter how much they try to exchange queens here, it would be queen takes g1 checkmate, because the queen is well protected by the bishop. So no matter how passively they try to play against this gambit, they're going to have serious problems. So if you made it to the end of the video, leave me a big like. It doesn't cost you anything, and I really appreciate it a lot. Plus, I have a great time reading your comments too. So I hope you loved it, and we'll see each other tomorrow, as always, friends, in the next Agiles video. Goodbye.